Hey guys, how we doing this evening? I'm JC, your host, and we have a slightly updated setup tonight. And with me is my co-host Jolly01. How you doing, Jolly?
Evening, everybody.
Good evening. And then we've got Turin. How are you doing this evening, Turin?
Good. Howdy, howdy.
Okay, and along with us for the ride is Nomidius. There we go. There's Nomidius.
I changed. Hey, how's it going?
She's got some stuff mislabeled, I'm guessing. And then also with us is Captain of the Fighter Mafia, Josh. How you doing this evening?
I'm fantastic. I hope everyone else is.
Good. And last but definitely not least, we have Shapcap. How you doing this evening, Shap?
Hey guys, doing well. Thanks for asking.
Good. Good. Well, we threw together a show this evening. Hopefully it's pretty good. One thing I want to do real quick is give a shout out to my beautiful bride of 20 years, Jaglin. And
congratulations.
You could see that there's now actually a light, so you can see her face. And Jaglin did all the new design work that we have on the system with all the cool new graphics, and we're all in cool 16:9 boxes so that we look like we're not coming from the 80s. So her and Sam, and we put in a new mixer that allows us to control audio better. So hopefully the audio sounds better and is working great. So with that said, I think we're going to move on to segment number 1. And our first segment tonight is about the Cyclone MT. And I think we're going to watch that video really quick and show you guys in case you haven't seen this. This is the new buggy. Hey, Leaf, how you doing? So, Charlie, what do you think about the Cyclone MT?
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a cyclone. I'm sure the same bugs the other cyclones did. To be honest, as somebody who owns both a AA and a TR, it's like I'd rather have 2 of these than 1 each of those. So, shame on me for buying early. I should have held off, pick up a couple of these things instead.
But you can upgrade them.
Yeah, I did. I upgraded a regular cyclone to one, then I bought one outright.
So, yeah, I completely agree. I think that what does this do? I mean, does this make Cyclone AAs and TRs completely
The only
obsolete?
thing I don't know, does the MT have an EM feature?
I don't think it
No.
does.
That will be the difference between that and an AA.
There you
it
go.
does. Go ahead.
Well, and I believe they said the MT is going to require a second person to man the missiles, whereas I think the AA, the driver, could do it.
No,
No.
it requires a gun.
No.
It does require.
Those
Okay.
two.
Yeah.
Dude.
The AA requires a missile. Okay, but a guy in
Yeah.
the passenger seat. He's not in the back.
2
Correct.
people.
Right.
Yeah.
2 people.
It'll
Yeah,
fit
there's no
3.
gun in the back of an AA.
It's a spot
Yeah.
to stand to get shot at.
My question is, what's the purpose of the EMP for the ground vehicle?
Well, to
Maybe
EMP
keep
other
somebody
ground
from taking
vehicles.
off.
Yeah,
EMP other ground vehicles? You get close? I mean, can't you just shoot them?
the AA has an EMP for aircraft.
Yeah,
But
we
how
can reach
far
'em.
out does that go?
Great question.
Maybe
Yeah.
we can get like a.
I don't think
boom and
the
zoomer.
EMP. Yeah, I don't. I'm not. Sure, the EMP. It could be sort of like what the Harbinger has the EMP for until we have the EMP missiles on. They gave it the EMP feature. I mean the Sentinel. I'm talking about the
Sentinel,
Sentinel.
okay.
Yeah, the Sentinel.
It would
But
make sense.
I just
for it
can't
if it had
see. I just can't see what the EMP feature for a ground vehicle would be unless you want maybe to take out another vehicle if you're in the chase and you don't want to destroy it accidentally by shooting it, or you're rolling up side of a building and you kick it off so that the stuff inside will go out. If if you're trying to take out the electronics in there, but I don't.
Sounds like a pirate vehicle.
Or take out a combat suit, like a guy wearing
No,
a
I,
mech.
I don't
a
think
mech
it's
suit
a
or
pirate
something.
vehicle. I mean, it could be a good infill, stealth infill. If you're going to take out like a segment of a fence line or a segment of a barrier or something like that, if you EMP it, I just think with that much discharge, whoever's watching their monitor hopefully will probably see it. So, I mean, I really don't
Weird.
know.
All the cameras went out in this sector.
Oh my God! Yeah, I'm serious. Did you see that blue
Must be-
flash
must
out the
be a
window?
glitch.
So, Nom, do you own a Cyclone?
I bought it. Not currently. I bought them in game, but I like them well enough. It's not the first time that they've come out with a new design and it made something else obsolete or unnecessary. Right now, the question is, why does the RT exist? Well, what have they done before? You'd have that creep where weapons on ships would go up in size. And it's like, well, what about this ship? Well, that's what happened with the 300. When all these other ships started getting more powerful, they basically upped all the guns on the 300 series by a whole size. So if they want the RT to have a reason to exist, they're probably going to have to change what size weapon it carries, because otherwise it's just an MT without missiles. Otherwise it's identical, really.
So,
RT?
Cap, here's a question.
Sure.
Do the missiles on the new MT track? Are they air to air, or does that
that is a good
represent a
question.
potential
Ground air.
difference between ground versus the Cyclone AA?
Yeah, I mean, are they fly by wire? Are they like a tow missile, or are they, are they dumbfire? Can you dumbfire them into stuff?
I believe they said in the Q&A you could dumbfire them at ground targets, but you couldn't lock them.
I like the idea to dumbfire. I think I like using weapons for not what they're intended for to accomplish the job. Like using a law rocket to take out a sniper. I like things like that. So the ability to release ordnance at what you want to shoot at, whether the computer agrees with you or not, I think is an important feature. So if they have that, then that's also a selling point. But to everyone's point, what's the TR going to do now? I mean, it needs to have either a massive size 5 Gatling gun on it, or a grenade, or a grenade
launcher.
Grenade launcher, a rapid fire grenade launcher.
Or just an a size or two increase or something.
Size 3, size 4 would be fine.
I imagine
one of
it's
the
going to
problems
be slower.
Which one would be slower?
The new one, it's going to be slower. It's got more equipment, heavier maybe.
No, it doesn't look like it's any slower.
I think it's probably the same dynamic. But not being able to launch the missiles at a ground-based target is a problem right now, because you can't do a standoff and lob a couple missiles into a turret or lob a couple missiles onto a target somewhere. It's just you can't catch a ship sitting on the ground and lob it. I don't think.
You can target ground turrets now. You can do that.
Yeah, but I don't think the missile will go. Well, maybe they've changed it, but before
I've killed turrets with missiles before.
I didn't say you couldn't kill them with missiles. I said, can you launch them from the vehicle?
Well, then how?
Can you launch instead of using the AA missiles as AA? Can you, take a parabolic curve and go boom like that?
Don't know. I haven't tested that.
Last time we tested it, the answer is no.
Well, I mean,
Dumbfire.
I would say missiles are a little too zippy to be artillery, right?
Yeah.
You got to be
dumbfire
really
should
far
allow you
away
to do
to
that.
dumbfire something in,
Which isn't
and
here
arc
yet.
it.
Well, it would be nice
Line
to
of
be able
sight.
to sit a couple of these things on the other side of a ridge line, have a target that you could target, and lob them over somehow, like artillery shells.
You're gonna get Josh fired up on being able to paint targets again.
He's going to be telling us how we need a target pod on the.
How about just a laser pointer?
Well, just need
how
a
about
paladin in the game. That's all we need to do.
Yeah, just a laser pointer with a laser code, and then I can have a targeting pod in my ship that finds it. I mean, that'll work for me.
Yeah, mechanized howitzer. That's all.
Quick,
we need.
Jay, cut him off.
Mechanized howitzer.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't.
Who
get
knows? Maybe the
started
tank
on
will be
that.
able to lob shells over things.
I did have two things to add about the
Go ahead, Noam.
about the MT. The ad got me looking. If you notice where it lands on the ramp, stealing from Star Trek or whatever other sci-fi you want to say they did there with the landing in the ship, jumping off the cliff. But did you see the wheel physics in that? It was basic, and they've talked about that in a previous video, like this week or last week, where they got the tires handling a bit more realistically. No more of the drift citizen thing we see going on in 312 right now. I'm real excited for that. Yeah, I'm really hoping we're seeing that soon.
Yeah, I remember that they did that recently, where the tires know the terrain type that they're on and react accordingly.
And the suspension will realistically bounce. Yeah. I'm really hyped for that if it's coming. And the other thing is, every time I see the vehicles come up, you always got people saying, well, what's the point of a vehicle? You're better off just spawning even another light fighter. The thing we haven't seen yet, there's stuff on the roadmap for it, is terrain being a factor in signature of a vehicle of something. Terrain or just environment is what it says, I think, on one of the roadmap cards. That's if it doesn't matter, saying, well, it's only got so much size weaponry if you can't see it. So you're flying in an outpost and you're not going to have the same range on a fighter as you would have one of these as far as picking it up. That's going to change their tactical advantage a lot when they can't be seen until up close. Because why would it have as big a signature as a light fighter? It doesn't have a bunch of engines, a quantum drive, all that junk.
Well, and also if you have a heavily defended area with some kind of anti-air, potentially you could send in some vehicles like this to clean it up before you send in the ships.
Which gets back to what you guys were saying about ground-to-ground attack.
Yep.
Yeah.
We really need to have that.
In the Squadron 42 vertical slice, actually part of the mission was that you had to go disable everything before you could come in. Remember, that's why he had to land. Or you, the player, had to land, was to go in and disable the AA defenses so that Mark Hamill could come and land.
Yeah.
Or the old man.
Completely agree that I see these as useful. They're small enough that you can shove them in smaller ships like Cutlasses, and I wish they had made them just a hair bit smaller so they'd fit in the back of Freelancers. That would be nice. But you know, I view this. I do question. I think the AA still has a place. The MT pretty much kills the TR unless they change something on the TR. The other thing I'm missing is a cargo grid on these things. None of these Cyclones appear to have a cargo grid of any size.
I thought there was one.
The
that-
regular
Yeah,
one.
The base one has a single SCU card.
Yep.
The reconnaissance one does.
Does it?
Yeah.
Whatever the base one is, whatever the
No, the
MR,
reconnaissance one
RN,
has a big dish on top of it. like
MR,
a big
whatever
plate
it's
on top
called.
of it.
Just
whatever the base one is.
It's just Cyclone.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. But it does. It just has a big hole where a one SCU box would fit.
You can actually open it.
You can load it up actually.
Yeah. Well, you can actually open it and try to put a box down.
Let's-
It'll fall through. But
Let's not forget that Origin is also releasing 3 vehicles, one of which is a pretty big missile boat as well.
Yep.
Got a
I'm
lot
curious to see how those play.
missiles on it than these Cyclones do.
Yes, definitely. And those are a little smaller and sleeker, and obviously have the curves that you would get with an Origin Mercedes-Benz class.
But I don't think
Right.
they had quite
Right.
the suspension that a Cyclone has, so you may not get as rough a terrain out of it.
Well, yeah, I'm not driving my Mercedes through a mud pile or something.
Oh,
I was just juiced when the wheels started turning, you know. We all remember the day when the wheels didn't turn.
Yeah.
well, we've forgotten all about that one big hot thing about the Cyclone was how the tires were supposed to transform for rough terrain.
oh yeah, they're
Or-
supposed to like scallop out and
Yeah.
hang in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That just happens so fast you can't see it. It's happening. It's happening.
I don't know about the whole St. Patrick's Day green though. I was not a fan of that green.
I'll tell you what, the Ursa, the green Ursa looks pretty snappy.
Yeah, I was going to say, Shep, I got one of those. It's better than. In fact, I think in the Ursa Fortuna, no, you can't sit down. One of them you can't sit down in the back seats of the troop seats. One of the two, I can't remember which one.
You get a better gun with the Fortuna too.
But
You get
the
a
Fortuna
Gatling.
gets, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's a much nicer ship
Mhm.
or vehicle.
So, but you can't carry anybody in the back.
No. There's troop seats in them, but in
Oh.
one of the two, I can't remember which one it is. You
It's
can't sit
broken.
in the troop seats. You can only sit in the original one, I think.
That makes sense.
It's just the mechanic doesn't work. I mean,
Somebody just
it's-
forgot
they'll
to
fix it,
enable
hopefully.
enable the button.
They'll fix it. They'll fix it in finishing.
Yeah.
6 years from now.
Soon.
Soon, TM. Okay, so moving on, let's move on to the Fighter Mafia segment that we have. Joshua, do you want to get started on this? I think we have a couple videos that we want to show here real quick, and you and I can kind of comment on those. Let Jagling get these videos up and running for us. So, and this is thanks to some of the fleet security and S3 guys we have at ADI that helped put this training video together. So, Josh, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what our thoughts are on Fighter Mafia?
Yeah, so first of all, it's really great to work with these guys. We have an amazing crew that's been really, really dedicated. And, you know, working with Star Citizen, we're talking about the perspective of being in a big organization and working together. And what we have been able to accomplish is to take the things we've talked about before on this show with what we went through last episode with what we see when we take pilots and try to get them to fly together, and some of the advances they get for their first and second training time. This is taking it to another level of teamwork where we're actually getting ships to work in a coordinated fashion and trying to understand what that means and be able to be effective and use that, I guess, our numbers to our advantage. And what we found is that there is some really significant advantages. It takes some good skills and some things we'll talk about, but this has been, Star Citizen is a great game, and visually, I don't think I've played anything quite as stunning as when you walk out on one of the stations above the planet and you see the planet and it's all tilted and the sun's coming up. I mean, it's just amazing. But Star Citizen in itself, some of the gameplay isn't ready yet. It's still a game in development. And so it's hard to get and sustain all the excitement you could possibly have after 7 years. No offense, right? But doing this really has reinvigorated my thoughts and thinking and made Star Citizen super fun. So if you're looking for a challenge, this is definitely where I found a new one, and I've been enjoying it a lot. What has been your thoughts, Jay?
Well, I think that as we look at this and talk about it, the great thing about being in an organization is you have people to play with, and group play and learning how to work together with people, and fighting against people, and using, quantity is its own quality, at the end of the day, is one of the advantages of being in a big org that has a lot of active people, and you get to learn a lot of stuff. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this particular test, and we're just using these videos as examples. But I can say that the testing here was against probably one of the better known pilots in ADI, who has won some Star Citizen PvP competitions in Europe. And this was us testing tactics that we should be able to, this tactic should work very well against probably all but maybe the top 50 or 100 fighter pilots out there, two versus one. 4 versus 1, it probably would take out virtually
anybody.
Yeah. So,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we talk about Star Citizen, there's a lot of examples of why a large organization or an organization in general is to your advantage. They've said that if you're going to operate in uncontrolled space, there's probably more financial reward for that. But you're going to have things like fuel for your ships and starfarers and different types of support. So we know that teamwork is going to be there. And this is one of those examples of being able to protect all that work and your assets. And yes, what we have found is that, 2 pilots working together is a very, very strong force. And we've seen a lot of videos of people showing solo fighting and, an arena commander and doing some of the things that works there. But I think we're going to be able to use our size and force and teamwork to our advantage. I really do.
Yeah. And teamwork is the way to go. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel bad for guys that it's only them or them and one other buddy. It's hard really to experience all the different aspects of the game if you're by yourself. What do you think, Jolly, on teamwork and this kind of fighter mafia tactic that we're taking in with the fleet security guys?
There's an advantage to it. The problem is training for it. It's easy to go out and train solo. You do it anytime you want to.
Yep.
It's not difficult at all. But you have to schedule out, plan out, and coordinate or get team training done. We can do it. It's not a problem to be able to get it done. I just realize a little more extra effort is needed. A little more extra commitment is required.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And building a training program that's scalable for an org is not an easy task. It's, lots of man hours have to go into optimizing that kind of training so that when the time comes, you can, roll out that training and teach a couple hundred people, 300-400 people how to do this.
Well, and even though we've learned this, now we got to break it down into individual segments for training and try to, like you said, apply it to the larger group or at least the section of fleet security. So that alone is going to take some time. And, I'm looking forward to that challenge, but I think that's going to be a big one.
It is. Turing, what are your thoughts now that you're the official head of fleet security?
Well, I can tell you that first off, I'm extremely proud for the guys. There's a couple of them that Josh, you can chime in, but I would say that they didn't have a lot of experience
Nope.
when you first started, and through constant practice, direction, revectoring of what you wanted to accomplish, you see the results, and the opposition pilot they went against, gave them high praise, which was very much deserved. The challenge is going to be, how do we take this, which is really the end product of where you want to be. These are the elite. This is the elite tactic that you want to have at the end, and layer cake that so that you build, you build toward having a cadre that you can call upon, and a cadre that will turn around and be able to train the next group and the next group and the next group. So, we'll be taking this and breaking it down into the segments, and making it so that right now, whatever training program you have has to be both resilient, so that when the new alpha patches come out, that what you're building is not dependent upon the specific game mechanic that you're experiencing during that build, because it may change, and it has to be scalable to a large size organization. But it's a fantastic start, and look forward to doing it.
Well, and to that effect, what I'd like to say is that we do have a great group of guys, and it's amazing to work with them, and they deserve a lot of praise for that. But these guys had no real flight sim experience, no real combat experience. And when I first went up against them, I just started using some thinking stuff, because they were better at flying than I was in Star Citizen, to try to show them some different things. And, that's the encouraging part, is that these guys have gone from not a lot of experience to doing this in a relatively short time. Now, I'm going to put them on a higher end than average of competency and dedication and desire. So I think those things help. But I think your average person in Star Citizen, given the right format and path, can achieve this pretty straightforward. I think your average pilot can do it.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to, if we look at the approach that we want to take, which is, first you need the mastery of flight itself. You got to be able to learn how to fly the ship in such a way that you're not thinking necessarily about how you're operating the craft. It's muscle memory on how to do it. From the very beginning, you add on top of that your communication and your brevity pieces that you need, and then once you've mastered that piece of it, you're a master of flight for that ship that you're flying. Then you can move on to become the master of combat that you want. You introduce those tactics, because you don't have to learn how to fly the aircraft at that point, or spacecraft at that point. You just learn how to do the tactic. So it's a layered approach to building that skill set. And then once you've achieved that, you turn around and you find 2 or 3 other guys that you bring in, and you start building that, and it quickly morphs from 4 to 8 to 16 to 32, and they're up. Will everybody
like
be at this
scheme.
level? Yeah, well, my middle name is Ponzi, but
I mean, the one thing I would throw in here, Turing, is I interviewed all these guys after seeing the video, and the 2 main guys that did this, and I just didn't ask their permission to name them, so I'm not going to. But the 2 main guys, from start to finish to this point, was about 20 hours each, but that included theory crafting with leadership, right, then going in game and actually developing the tactics, and then theory, working, figuring out from the theory crafting to actual usability,
right,
and then finally implementing it and tuning it. The 2 other folks that kind of tagged on at the end, it only took them about 6 hours to get up to speed, and are almost as good as the first 2.
And I would say the critical thing, Jay, is it's kind of like when we talked about with the profiles. It's not trying to figure out how you're going to do it. It's figuring out what you're going to do, because you already have the how worked out. And so they can think about how to apply those tools in the fight. And all 4 of them are up to that speed already.
Yep. So, the one thing that I'll point out in this that most people aren't going to notice is that there's no strafing. for all practical, no blind strafing occurring by the attackers. And the other person is strafing. The other person is a dual Hosas or whatever you would call it, dual stick pilot who is very good on his own, but against 2 or more dedicated attackers, he's just not able to hold up, and against 4, they slaughter him in 3 or 4 minutes. And he's he's won some in-person tournaments in Europe for Star Citizen, so he's not a bad pilot.
Yeah.
And that, no,
stretch.
And that's again the teamwork. And speaking of which, we looked at what it takes to make this work, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. And I kind of broke down some wingman skills, and I'd like to put them, I think these are in order. We can debate them, but I want you to notice where weapons is. And it's not number 1, because number 1, I think, is speed control. Got to be able to have the ability to control your speed. We're going to talk about this a little bit more at the end here with dual sticks and what that means. Staying in position is another key that requires some situational awareness to what your lead pilot is doing. Maybe trying to get an anticipation of that by understanding where your target is. Your energy management, so making sure that you don't end up in a low speed situation or too much speed. We are certainly seeing that speed affects accuracy. And then right after that is comms, being able to communicate what you're doing, identify what the bad guy is doing, and talk about what you guys need to do as a group to counter that. And then finally, we're going to get to weapons, which is 5th on the list, because all those things come together, and then you get into the shooting part. And then lastly, managing your shields. We are seeing that that's something that's important, whether that's moving them around or just realizing that you're being hit too much and you got to disengage.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Nam?
I'll start by saying that I'm really a novice. I still consider myself a novice when it comes to this stuff. I listen to you guys. I love this. Try to absorb what I can. But all I can say is I see the value in it from the point of view of somebody who considers themselves new to all of it. It's like Jay said earlier, feels bad for the guy who's in it by himself or with one other person. You don't get the full experience in the game. They haven't generally given us very, very good tools for operating as a team.
No.
But you can make do.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
Okay.
can make do with the current ones.
Yep.
Shepcap, what are your thoughts after seeing this?
Well, personally, I am admittedly not much of a fighter pilot. I'm more of my play style is more of a up close brawler. You know what I mean? Like I'm the guy who flies the freelancer miss and just lays into you and hopes to destroy you in the first run.
Launches 12 missiles at once.
Yeah, well,
Four guns.
Just spend that money.
Yeah. But to echo what everybody else has been saying here, I think that you can't put enough value on training and knowing what to train. And just circling back to being in an org that provides these things. I've played plenty of games with semi-realistic consequences for dying. Like you lose all your stuff. People take all your junk. You got to go back to wherever you start. And being a lone wolf in a game like that is very difficult because, as we can see here, even if you're the best shooter in the game, if 5 idiot shooters attack you at once, like you just can't win the fight. And then if they have better tactics, then just forget about it. It's game over. So,
Shep, do you think from seeing this and what we're talking about, if you were to enter into, say, trying to achieve this yourself, do you think it'd be overwhelming?
No, I think with the right training protocols, I could get into it. It's all about putting time into it.
Yeah.
The brevity I'm pretty good on. I picked up on that back in the days we used to do Friday night flights. I'd have a laminated list sitting on my desk next to me, and I would look at it while I was flying around before I'd make calls.
And
I think
memorized it.
Exactly, rote memorization. I think my biggest my biggest hang up on being able to necessarily fly like this is, I just love my mouse and keyboard. I'm not ready to go to HOTAS yet. Maybe someday. Maybe someday I'll add it in. Yeah, I've come close to getting, believe it or not, just a throttle, because I find a throttle easier to control to set a speed. But yeah, I'm just not there personally for me yet. Maybe in the future I'll get there, but I'm not. Like I said, I'm more of a stormtrooper kind of guy. I spend a lot of time running around the ground with guns and driving vehicles. So, but I think with the right equipment and the right training team and enough time, you can accomplish anything, especially in a video game.
Well, and sorry, go ahead, Jolly.
No, one thing I wanted to bring up. Finish off your conversation with Shap first, though.
Sure.
Oh no, I just wanted his perspective on it because I come from a different perspective, and I think when we're talking about trying to train it, understanding what somebody who's never really done anything like this thinks is helpful. So I just wanted to hear what he had to say. That's all.
Absolutely helpful, and I think the way we're going about it is great. And again, benefit of a big org.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up, Josh, you mentioned energy management, which is in real life, that's very, very true. It's all about kinetic and potential energy, or airspeed and altitude. Those don't carry over to the game, though, because we don't really care about altitude when you're in space. No. So it's all just kinetic energy and controlling kinetic energy, whether, as you said, I'm going too fast, too slow. Am I using all my kinetic energy right now, or do I have reserve kinetic energy, meaning I can speed up even further if I need to? That's just a little change as opposed to those who are used to playing flight simulators, World War II or modern-day flight simulators. A different type of EM than what we're used to.
It is, and now EM also affects accuracy, at least of weapons and missiles. Mm-hmm. So it's a different application of EM that I knew they had talked about. The distances had changed and something about the SEM speed and what would happen, but actually getting in there and digging into it, it's a whole new world of thinking about it.
Yep, I agree.
So Josh, let's talk about the furball complexities. What are the problems when you enter into a fight like this that the pilots are having to focus on?
So, I think you talked before about having a bucket, and as a new pilot, you got a small bucket. And as you get used to all of the different things and operating the systems and just oriented to flying, your bucket gets bigger over time. Well, when you start adding more enemies and you start having more teammates, that bucket starts to fill up really fast, trying to keep track of where they are, being maybe just your wingmen versus the enemies. I know even just keeping track of your shield and what state they're in, and even where fire is coming from sometimes if there's more than one bad guy. So your bucket can fill up really fast and it can get overwhelming. And I think it's something that's going to take a lot of practice. And I'm sure us, as well as other orgs and individuals, are going to struggle with that for a while. The bigger that furball gets, I think the worse that's going to be. So I think there's going to be some real challenges that lead into things like deconfliction and running into each other. We had some collisions in doing some of this training. None blue v blue, thank God. But there was still some collisions, and so trying to work through that. Some of the other challenges is trying to figure out where to focus your fire. Do you try to take out both ships? Do you try to focus on one of the enemies? Do you divide it between them? There's some questions that come up and things happen really fast. SCM may only be 230 SCM. Yeah, but you're talking, meters per second. But you're talking about speeds that are, almost near the speed of sound, right? So it's moving really, really quick in real time. And so next is, coming into concise comms. When you listen to the comms in the 2v2, it's casual and they're talking through it and they've got lots of time where they can say little comments. When it gets into a bigger furball, those comments become harder to get out because you're processing so much, that bucket's getting full fast and you're trying to think of what to say. And by the time you say it, things have changed so fast because you have not just 2, 4, or 6, but you could have like 8 moving pieces at one time. So it gets really, really dynamic, really fast. And I think there's a lot of room for confusion in that mess. I really do.
Hey, Josh, if I could jump in real quick,
yeah.
What do you see comms wise? What do you see fall off the edge first? Like, what do people stop calling first? Do they stop marking targets? Do they stop calling ordnance going out? What do you see fall off the quickest?
I think they just stopped talking in general.
Oh, just shut
Right.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually just don't stop. They just usually
Until there's a
shut down,
splash, and then they say
Yeah.
splash, so
Right.
and then you're right
Yeah.
back in it. Yeah.
You know,
They become task saturated and stop talking. It's usually what
Pupils get
happens.
real tiny, and they just yeah.
Well,
And for the flight lead, that can be deadly for the group. You have
it
to.
can be.
Do you see tunnel vision? Do you see tunnel vision, Josh?
Oh yeah.
You know, it's funny. When I first started working with this group, they were better at flying as a lead and wingman. And the first time I tried to just follow and just be a good wingman, it probably took me 3 or 4 rounds to really understand the positioning I needed to be, when to, use the energy management or speed to be in the right position, to support and to fire. Yeah, and during those things, while they're communicating and they're talking about stuff and going on, I was a little lost. So yeah, it was a little tunnel vision, but it just takes a matter of time and focus. And then once I started mastering those little pieces, I could start thinking about the big picture. So yeah, tunnel vision can happen really, really quickly. I'm sure, Jolly, you've probably had some experience or comments on this.
Target fixation is normally what we'd call it, where, for example, you're coming at a target you're trying to engage, and you're just looking at your target, focusing so much on that, you forget everything else that's around you. That's your kind of calling. Me, tunnel vision is I'm losing my vision, but
Yeah.
the
Target fixation.
target fixation is what I'm more used to.
Yeah, and when I was trying to, be a good wingman, I was fixated on my lead. I couldn't engage in the fight right away because I'm trying to master that first step.
Yeah,
In
you're
this
trying
case,
to maintain
lead
your
fixation.
situation.
Good point, Josh.
You're trying to maintain where you are in position. Yeah, absolutely.
I had to build a bigger bucket before I could start to be involved.
The thing is, not everybody's going to be able to go to red flag right off, because this is really like, red flag. I mean, you're really going to the end there, and so that's why it's key to build a stepping stone approach. It doesn't have to be a lot of stones. I thoroughly agree. You don't have to have this is not a 5-step, 12-step process to get to the end. I think it's very quick for most people. Most people that we have been involved in flying in this game for a little bit of time. So,
Yep.
It's really just getting them comfortable and confident that they can do it. And I know they can do it. If you give it with repetition, you boil it down to what's important. You get like, I call it the 80% solution, but you always want to be 100% right, because you're going to get killed if you're not. But if you build enough repetition and confidence, then they'll feel better, and they'll be able to catch on. Most of the people are going to be able to do this, I think, rather quickly.
For anyone that doesn't know, Red Flag is a big military exercise where they put all the moving pieces together, from the ground troops to the fighters, and it's a big, big deal. And that's where you really go to show off your craft and how well you are at it.
Yeah, but it's also like what Jay was saying earlier. Red Flag is also coming back at the end of the day and watching the tapes and talking it and debriefing it out, and learning from that. That's really a major part of doing the Red Flag, is that you're building it on day by day. You're learning from your mistakes, so to speak, so you don't make them again.
Well, and you said something critical about it's a skill you learn, and it's perishable. And while we're not going to share all of the details, even if we did share the details, if you went and mastered it and you didn't keep proficient, it ain't going to matter, because things are just happening so fast and in real time, you just can't do it. And so I think one of the keys to this is going to be consistent dedication and flying. I know you've talked about potentially doing more consistent things with FleetSec in this arena. And I think those things are going to be critical for us to be successful and to maintain this and spread it through the larger segment of FleetSec.
Yes, being able to offer practice time, being able to begin to integrate, these tactics into our org operations, introducing some reality into what's happening, some surprise, some you just get into a routine right now, and it's just not fun. You have to make it fun and challenging. But it's just like being a surgeon. If you're not doing surgery, you begin to lose your ability to do surgery. And high speed, high echelon fighter pilots, you've got to go out and do it. But you you don't have to have everybody doing it all the time. Is what I'm saying. You know, you can't have something where you've got 500-600 people trying to shove through the pipeline.
No.
We don't need 500 or 600 people through that pipeline. I think we're going to be able to build it so that we begin to build enthusiasm and people will want to come and do this type of training.
Well, and once they learn it, they can go use it and apply it, and that in itself is going to maintain proficiency.
Right. I mean, we're doing this to build the training that we need during our org operations, but it also gives you survivability when you're just playing out there by yourself too.
Yep.
Real quick shout out to Sneck SC for the follow. Thank you very much. And let's, the big thing here that I would stress is that, there's the deconfliction, the situational awareness bucket is the hardest thing to teach. And you just have to focus on learning your basics. If you cannot, you need to fall back. First thing is you aviate, you fly the ship. If you cannot do that, and secondary is communicate. If you can't fly, navigate, and communicate, you don't need to worry about combat. You've got to be able to just do those as muscle memory before you start adding in the combat layers, or you're going to break down when the situational awareness bucket starts overflowing. And that's the mistake we see a lot of pilots making is that they, even in Star Citizen, where, the game isn't a high-end simulator. It's a very great game. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's no Falcon 4 BMS. And where you have to memorize, hundreds of pages of information to be successful. But it is, it is big enough that situational awareness bucket, when it starts to overflow, bad stuff happens.
And those are skills that, whatever the latest meta is, which I think some of the things we're working on are independent of that. Those
has to be.
Yeah. Right. But that bucket is still going to be there, and it's going to be able to adapt to whatever's going on quicker. So yes, I agree. That's the biggest key. I know for me, like I said, just in that one experience, just trying to get adapted, even building my bucket up specific to that role in Star Citizen was different than all the other flying I do.
Yep. So Himdall asks a question before we move on to the next segment of decoupled combat is exhilarating. Love SC in that respect. I'd like to point out, and Josh, let's kind of just go through the table here with some folks. But when we're looking at these examples, none of these pilots, with the exception of the OP4, the one guy, is really strafing hardly at all, and none of them are going decoupled, except for the OP4. Is that correct?
As far as I understand it, I think they may have used some decouple, but it's very little. It is not the majority of what they're doing.
When I debriefed them, they were not decoupling. They were doing non-blind strafing, i.e. they could see where they were strafing to.
Yep.
But they were not decoupling at all.
No, and look, decouple may have some place in the future, and we could always take a look at it. But I can tell you, as someone trying to be a wingman keeping up, you start doing some radical decouple stuff, and I'm going to get very separated from you. I'm not going to be able to be a good wingman. So, is it exhilarating to do on your own? Yeah, so are a lot of things. But when you're trying to work as a team, it looks very, very different. And I think some people that are playing this solo or in small groups, when this game goes live and they start to see the reality and maybe the imposing reality and limitations that there are working in those smaller groups, I'm going to feel for them, because this is not going to be something you're going to solve quickly.
The only thing, I'm very careful about throwing decoupled combat aside. I mean, it is a feature of this game.
It is.
It doesn't exist in other simulators out there. And if you know how to do it well, it's going to give you a huge advantage. Now, Josh, you and I have talked about this quite a bit in the past. Tactical formation flying isn't a welded wing. Nope. It never, ever happens that way. You're spread out very far. Yep. And maybe if to take advantage of this decoupled flying means you have to get even further apart from each other, or better communication or something. But it's something that we must include in our tactics.
Absolutely. And I will say
step one, but it has to be in there.
I will say this. We had an overarching concept that was passed down and I think slightly looked at, years ago. And we went to apply it, and we had to morph it, and we had to change it, and we had to adapt to what was happening there. In the future, I think that that's going to happen again. I do believe that decoupled flight and experimentation with it will work. The biggest thing I think that we have to be cognizant of is finding out what works. And I'm never against whatever. In fact, one of the guys in our training was like, "Well, we're not doing what was told to us about this concept," and I said, "It doesn't matter. We're winning." So,
Yeah,
We
yeah, a little ways. But
Yeah,
let me
we
let me ask you,
we took a,
Josh,
they took, hold on one second.
Josh.
Go ahead, and I'll turn it over to you, Charlie. They took a concept that we had been developing on paper and with some basic testing, and the changes to the game required them to make some modifications, but it is very similar to the on paper concept. The changes that they have made are tweaks that make it more effective. And so they did a great job with basically getting a classroom instruction on, here are things that you should be considering. Here's a tactic to go test. And then they took that tactic. It worked against AI fairly well. But when we put them against other higher end players, it fell apart, and they had to modify it.
Yep.
And the cool thing is the modifications they've made works against AI and lower end players even better.
Yep.
So it's been good. Turning over to you.
No, I had a question during the decoupled piece to Josh or Jolly, because do you think that decoupling would be some way that you could work on your energy management, perhaps, or would that be some place to put it in?
I mean,
I mean, you're changing the parabola of the you're trying to cut it short, come around, or trying to alter your trajectory quicker, perhaps, or
I'll say this from the little bit of testing I've done with it. If I want to turn around 180 degrees and start heading the other direction, it's faster for me to decouple, spin around, and hit the afterburner and my rear engines, which are stronger, than by trying to slow down with my front reverse thrusters and then turn around. So yeah, I do think there is some place for it. Like I said, I will try anything to beat you because I'm just a competitive bastard. So I'll throw anything in there.
But not turning your fighter into a turret.
No.
Stationary turret.
No.
That's not what we're talking about.
So
Good way to die.
what we saw.
This goes to what Josh talked about EM. If I'm flying along and I decouple, spin 180 to continue to fire at you, maintain the same direction, okay, that's good. I'm gauging you longer than I could have. If I should then gauge my thrusters, slow myself down, all we talked about, that potential kinetic energy, I'm now at zero.
Yep.
Because now you're a stationary target out there. Stuff like that we have to be very careful about as for when's the proper time to re-engage. Go on, spin around, shoot, spin back where I'm going the same direction. But right now, I haven't lost any of my kinetic energy, so I'm still good to go. So it's stuff like that we're going to need to get developed into it.
Yeah, that's a great way to overheat your engines too.
Well, one thing to keep in mind that we saw here was when the person that was doing radical maneuvers lost kinetic energy, they were very vulnerable to missile fire.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Very vulnerable to missile fire. So a circle strafe or doing a maneuver that cost them to lose kinetic momentum was placing them at super high risk of taking a missile. And the opponents, the guys that were using the modified boom and zoom, they learned very quickly that as soon they'd lock the target with a missile, and as soon as they saw them start to slow down, they'd fire a missile whether it hit or not, because it forced that person into a flee mode, and they didn't get to make another attack. They weren't able to successfully complete an attack because they were massively defensive, and the missile was right on top of them. And they died to a couple of missile strikes. So that's the thing that I think that you have to be cautious when you talk about strafing and you talk about decoupled. Decoupled definitely has a place. I'm not saying you can never use it. I'm just saying it's dangerous when you're in a group to do radical maneuvers like that blindly. That's blindly being the key word. And the other is it's dangerous because it's very easy to lose focus and lose kinetic momentum, kinetic energy in your flight path, and make you extremely susceptible to missile fire. So that's just one thing. Does that make sense, Jolly?
Yeah, all I'm saying is I'm going along and I decouple hand up here. I decouple, and so I can turn and keep straight shooting at you. That's fine. That's good.
Yep.
Now, if I want to go back, I need to go back to my vector, which we get an indicator on.
Yep.
And then
Right.
couple. I have not lost any of my kinetic energy whatsoever.
Correct.
But if I go like this and try to shoot then turn, couple, hit my afterburners, I'm going to go down to 0 kinetic energy, and I'm dead.
Yeah.
Correct. And what we saw was they would go into a hard strafe because the boom and zoom opponents would push onto them when they decoupled because they realized, okay, split and hit him from the sides. And when that happened, they were like moving sideways and would have to re-engage their engines. And as they did that turn to try to re-engage the guys that had split them, one of them, they would slow almost to a stop to start to engage them. And when they did that, they were very vulnerable. So in a perfect world, decouple has its place. You've just got to be really on top of stuff to look for that situation where you can decouple, engage, and then flip back around and escape or break, in a way that you can come back around and hit them.
Absolutely.
Nam, what are your thoughts on all of this before we move on to the next, the training aspects of it and things like that?
Can't really add much to that. As far as the physics in the game, we're all just trying to find the tools that work in the game. It doesn't matter what should work. It's what does work. But it's like trying to make a hard turn without decoupling. For whatever reason, the pitch seems like the pitch is always much stronger than yaw, and it doesn't overheat anywhere near as fast.
Yeah, rolling and pitching is faster than yawing.
Right.
There's no question about that. Turing, anything you want to add before we move on to the next portion?
Nope.
It's Chapcap.
The only thing I would add is that all this decoupling talk and if you're going to do it, you got to be right on the money, because to Jolly's point, you either decel to 0 and have to mash on your afterburners to get out, which means you're probably going to overheat. And one thing I've noticed is that even with just one overheat on your engine, you can cause a lingering issue in your ship that'll put you to disadvantage in a fight. Like the what do they call it, where the thrusters act erratic.
You get the imbalance.
Yeah, you get the imbalance. Yeah. So
That's
training. Keep that from happening.
Here's the thing to remember that we would, and I think all of us would agree, I'll double check with Jolly. Decoupling has its place. You've got to master a lot of other stuff before you even think about it, because there's a lot of, the skill set to be able to do all of that stuff while decoupled and not put yourself in a hole is a lot harder than not decoupling and fighting as a team. Jolly, I think you would agree with that.
I agree.
It's the level of training.
It's down the road a little bit before you get into it, but it must be in there eventually. It's like EM weapons. You don't want to start off with EM weapons. But we need them eventually.
Yep.
So, Josh, let's talk about this last bullet point that you have here real quick, because I think this is going to be a little bit controversial.
Yeah, so some people can get upset, and you can yell at me on Twitter or here or wherever. But in looking at this, I use a HOTAS, so I'm biased perhaps, and I have one stick, and I have a dual throttle, but it's one throttle really, right? And so I fly in a more traditional, conventional way that you might think of for a fighter jet. And, we're looking at, for this org, being able to look at a standard graph of ability and data set and a bell curve. And we're trying to get the average pilot to be better by working together, having good comms and all these things. But really what this is, the question that has to be asked is, a lot of people out there that are showing videos and streaming of their dual stick setups and their 1v1, really capable of a knife fight in a telephone booth, as Jay puts it. There's a place for that if that's what you want to do. But if you want to be in-game and effective as a group, you have to ask the question, does dual sticks really matter? And is there an advantage? And I'm going to say, I don't think so for your average pilot. I think that it is harder, in talking to the person who is using dual sticks, it is harder to manage your speed changes. It's harder to stay in formation. Circle strafe is less effective than it used to be for avoiding fire. Transverse velocity seems to be pretty good, but the actual circle strafing, Now, when it comes to straight up aiming, there's probably some advantage. But, we've talked about before where we thought dual sticks might be an advantage, but it'd be very hard and it'd be fatiguing if you're going to be in a 30 or 40-minute flight before you get to combat, because they are more fatiguing. But now I have to really ask the question, is dual sticks really the way to go in Star Citizen, considering that everything we have seen says that a larger org and working together as a group is going to be probably the better way? And sure, there's going to be extreme outliers and people that develop that skill, but I think for your average pilot and your average person, dual sticks is the wrong way. So I'd love to hear everyone's input, whether it's in chat or wherever. But from the testing we've seen, I think dual stick is in question now.
Well, and let's be clear. We're talking about for fighters, light
Yes.
fighters, medium fighters.
Yes.
Jolly, what are your thoughts on the dual stick? Do you think
I've never flown dual stick, so it's tough for me to make a judgment on it. What I would say is, based on what I have seen, there's a progression of complexity in controls. Easiest being keyboard, mouse. And a step up from that would be a HOTAS. And all you think is a step above that would be a dual stick. But it's not something I would not jump into it. I don't think I have the skill set to be able to jump in and fly dual stick. HOTAS, sure, but not dual stick. So if you've been doing it for eons and eons, as you said, outliers, guys who are really good at dual sticks, and they're flying dual sticks for quite some time, they know it. They've gotten used to it by now.
Yep. Well, and I point out that the person that we were using as op4 here is a dual sticker. He's one of the best. And 2 fairly novice HOTAS users were able to hold their own or defeat him 2v1. So, I mean, that is something to keep in mind. Turing, what are your thoughts on dual sticks as we talk about this?
Like Charlie, I've never flown with dual sticks. My muscle memory is with a HOTAS setup, so it'd be very difficult for me to do it. I just think it's more intuitive, like Heimdall says on the chat. I think it's just more intuitive to use the throttle setup. It seems I can get more finer control on my speed that way, and speed control is your number one issue when you're trying to maintain your formation. And I don't mean locking it in a diamond, but I mean in your place within the loop as you're trying to turn and go back. You have to be able to do that speed control. I just think it's more intuitive and easier to pick up if you have a standard HOTAS setup. But again, there are players that's what they do, and they do it very, very well. And I'm sure even there will be mouse and keyboard players, Jay, that might be able to do it very, very well if they know how to do it.
I am sure that there are some weird animals out there that are capable of that. But I'm not that. More power to them if they can, because that's a pretty big feat. Nom, what are your thoughts on dual sticks? Talk about light fighters again.
I don't disagree with what's been said at this point, that it's like you're always going to have your outliers that once they get the skill set, they can just kill with it. I mean, but you can hear about some savant out there that's playing a first-person shooter with a joystick. So you can teach yourself to control anything with just about anything. But it's where the money is the one thing we haven't really mentioned is you're starting to buy all these dual sticks. It's hard to get a hold of the sets we usually recommend. So now people are going to VKB and the other brands that are popping up and coming up with some really good stuff now. But
it's
a matter of where's your money best. What?
You're $500 in the hole. For
right. Exactly. So that's the thing is unless you got just money's no object, where's your money best spent? You start out with mouse keyboard, then you get a HOTAS. Before you move on to something like dual stick and putting all that money into it, your money's better spent towards getting a track IR for having better situational awareness, getting a set of pedals so you have better overall control of the ship. Then move on to if you got the extra cash to spend and you feel like doing it, then go into dual stick and stuff, because there's a lot of money involved when you really get into this.
And again, we're approaching this from the perspective of working as a team, flying as a team, not as individuals. Shap, anything you want to add to this?
No, I'm just going to echo what other people have said. I think you got to fly with what you're comfortable with. A recommendation is just that. It's a recommendation, not a requirement. But like I'm a mouse and keyboard guy. I'm not ready to go to a stick. set up, and like we've already said, nobody's saying throw your dual stick out the window and replace it, but there are some advantages that we can see to the general population, not necessarily use case. Like I am bot 5, for example, in chat, went the other way. He started with a HOTAS and went to a dual stick, or I'm sorry, or they start with the HOTAS and went to a dual stick. So it's all about what you can fly with and what you're effective with. But where it plays in or comes to play for us is your ability to use those tools going to help or hinder our mission. Like if we have to give you a wide berth because you need more room to swing because you're less precise with your controls console, it's a problem for sure.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of you have to conform to for the good of the org, but there's also some of like you got to be comfortable playing the game too. Like if you made me use a HOTAS, I'd fly into a lot of things for a very long time before I got a grip on it. I'm just so used to keyboard. It's natural for me. It's what I've been playing with since I was 12. So
Well,
anyways, those are my thoughts.
And no judgment on anybody who uses whatever type of controller. I just think that what we're seeing is beginning to ask questions in that arena, especially for working as a group and in a large org. So I think it's been a great experience. Again, the guys in FleetSec who have been working with this and the pilots that have joined us, it has made Star Citizen extremely fun for me. And I appreciate that. We've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Yeah, and as Kestrel says on here, the key here is practice, practice, practice makes perfect.
Yep.
It's repetition. We're just verbalizing our experience running a large org, seeing a lot of different people. And it seems to me, and I think most of us, that we notice that HOTAS flyers tend to get up the bell curve and to the top of the hill a little bit quicker. And the efficiency differences that a dual stick will bring requires so much more practice to get to the top of that bell curve where you can fly and stay and work together as a team, that it's a tough thing to sell. So, Joel, any final thoughts before we move on to segment number 3?
No, that's right. One thing you said, the turn. As for used to using a HOTAS, it's natural. It really is. But if you're used to flying simulators, not quite there because you're used to the simulator. If I pull aft, I got to increase throttle.
Yep.
Not Star Citizen.
Nope.
Leave throttle alone.
No, you don't.
So there are some muscle memory things you got to forget when you change the game over.
Otherwise, you're.
Bad things happen.
Do you reach for the collective?
Yeah, it's a natural thing.
Don't do that. There you go.
Jolly would really appreciate a collective some days. Anyhow, let's move on to the new support tools that they announced. I think Joni's got a video for us to see on that. Let's let her bring that up. And yeah, we'll just have to wait. They're talking here. So, the big thing that I wanted to talk about here is some of these bigger tools. So the big one that I noticed was this rifle-sized cutting tool. Nam, what do you think about that coming out? I mean, that looks like a pretty cool thing to cut up a ship with, doesn't it?
They present a lot of this stuff, and then it'll be like, well, that was nice. We saw that a year ago, and then maybe we'll hear about it.
Yeah.
So I'm skeptical whenever I see stuff like that. I'd love to see that come out soon. I mean, but it all comes down to the mechanics it depends on. We've yet to really get our hands on any real cutting mechanics in the game to begin with. So they don't usually do these things by half. Look what they did with mining. Mining is finally where it's in a really good place, I think.
It is. It just took them a while.
Right. And where's medical right now? We've heard so many things about that, various medical gear and all that. We got the med pens and the beds that you can wake up in when you get killed out there.
We're going to talk about the medical stuff. We're going to talk about the new stuff soon. So
right. But it's just, okay. That's I'd love it. It's just I want to see the mechanics before I can have an opinion about it. It looks nice.
It looks.
But that's all it is to me.
They got a great art department.
What I would say, they came out with the tractor gun. Brand new, comes out to us. It works great.
Yeah, I love it. I love the
Very
tractor.
intuitive. It's like they did this right. So my hope is, same with the cutter. We'll come up with it. It's like it works great. It's what we want it for, and it's nice that we need the breach door ability somehow. And maybe this will get it for us.
I guess I should give them some credit. The tractor beam they did do a good job with.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun.
Yeah.
Well, and rumor has it that, or they showed us a rifle-sized tractor gun
Bigger
that
stuff.
is going to be able to pick up bigger stuff and throw it around.
Fantastic. Good catch.
Yeah,
Big
here,
Gordon
let me pick
Freeman.
this. Well, but this thing could be really cool. This may be where we could pick up like a rock and move it into position in the ship. That would be great. That would
Toss the ball, the dog.
It's starting to bring back some like Half-Life, some Half-Life 2 vibes. Where you could kill people with physics objects.
I got
You might be able to turn that MT over when it flips on its side. So
Oh,
I got some
That's a good one.
Put your rock back on its wheels.
high-speed exfil ideas with that gun.
point at the ground and throw yourself
Grab
up
some
in the
people.
air.
Yeah.
Well,
I can
here's the
stand
thing,
at the
can
end
you
of the
throw
pad
grenades?
as you fly over and just hit the ship. And...
Hold on to your lunch.
So Kestrel makes a very good point here. Thank you for the comment. This is exciting for forcing people into roles down the line, i.e., we're going to get into a situation where we really, you're not going to be able to carry everything. You're going to have to, you're going to have guys on there that are med guys, and you're going to have, that's what they're carrying because they've got to carry all that extra stuff in their spacesuit. So I think this will make the game where we have more specialized people. What do you think, Shapcop?
I think that more tools the merrier. I love seeing, I love variety in a game. I don't like, like where you go to the shopkeep and you buy like the tool, like the pickaxe. I like that we've got some variety here. And I'm a big fan of it. I think it's going to bring some great industry options. I'm curious to see how the salvage mechanic's going to work. Are you going to be able to cut things into predetermined pieces? Like you have to follow a line, like shipbreakers, or are you going to be able to make individually sized pieces? I know we're not doing voxel tech here, so I'm not really sure how that's going to work. Are you just cutting fuel lines and grabbing components, or are you like grabbing holes and inner holes and doors, and are you putting them in a pile to go give to a scrapyard somewhere? That's kind of what I'm curious about there. The medical stuff, I want to see how that works. Is it going to be like a beam of health that gets shot out at you, or are we shooting like medical darts?
Well,
is it an injection? Is it? I'm curious to see how that's going to play out too.
Well, it's something you have to be close for. It sounds like the other thing they were talking about is it's going to have a sensor on it with a mini game that basically indicates how much of what type of medicine you need to be injected with.
And you have to have the cartridge of that. I remember seeing that. You have to have like the cartridge of those drugs.
Correct.
In the gun at the time.
Correct.
I do like the idea of the Grey Cat multi-tool being a true multi-tool. How it's kind of like jack of all but master of none.
Correct.
And then we get the bigger, heavier, bulkier versions of the master tool.
I agree completely.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of that because anybody you could have an entire Marine squad load out with a multi-tool, but you can only have one doc who's got
all the kit.
the doctor gun. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, what you're going to get is like a Special Forces A team or something like that. You're going to have the engineer, you're going to have the medic, you're going to have the combo.
Team Fortress.
Team Fortress. What I don't want, Shep, I don't want Team Fortress when you got a guy running around shooting a medical beam at everybody. I mean, I don't think that's cool. But I do like the idea of being able to outfit your squad for the task at hand. I think that's going to be cool. What's going to be key is how much you're going to be able to carry and how persistent that all that equipment's going to have to be, et cetera, et cetera. So,
and I'm going to say this, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you're welcome. But I think that breaching charge looks like the DJI Mavic drone.
It does.
Pretty sure that's what it is.
Wow.
And what I want to know is, can you put blades on it and fly it somewhere, and then stick it on a door?
Fly it into something.
Yeah, fly it with your Moby glass.
Yeah. Kestrel makes a good point in chat there. He's not only you only got so much room for stuff. The medic may have to give up one or both weapons on his back for the equipment he's carrying. So that greatly changes the firepower effectiveness you have in a squad or whatever.
Right.
Completely does. I agree. This is going to have a lot of flexibility and add a lot of functionality to marine gameplay or ground combat gameplay.
I'd like to jump in real quick with a question.
Okay, jump in.
Crossbow.
Nope.
Useful tool or meme weapon?
Nope.
Not useful.
Nope.
It is pure junk. I'm going to be honest. I think it's.
I mean, is it going to be a golden gun? Like you land a hit on somebody,
It's
and
supposed
it
to be
rips their suit open, and they depressurize and blow apart. I don't know.
It's supposed
bringing
to
the
be
knife to the gunfight.
It is, but it's supposed to be the silent.
Yeah, no EM.
There's that.
No EM, no IR, nothing.
Yeah, the silent killing method, and maybe that gun is going to come in handy when they have these sneaking
very
crawls.
Limited scenarios.
Yeah, the sneak and crawl missions that they're putting you in, where you have to do stealthy, sneaky stuff.
Yeah, or around
AI.
around civilians that aren't armored or things of that nature. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, this guy has a what we call a standard blueberry suit, heavy armor 40%, but is that crossbow ain't gonna do jack against that?
Bounce off. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, right now we have the silencers on weapons, so that's already pretty effective for silent kills. So it'll depend. Well, we'd have to see how effective it is in that.
I mean, unless you want to get your inner Hawkeye on and have all kinds of special crossbow things or something like that, I don't see it being effective.
Well, the whole thing came about because of Shroud of the Avatar, right? Like that was your free thing if you signed up for Shroud of the Avatar. Wasn't that it? Like because they were somehow linked, those two studios.
I think so.
It was like a freebie. Yeah,
that's what it was.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think that it's going to be PvE, sneaky, stealthy missions is the only time that's going to get used. And you'll need it for those missions because the AI will not detect where you're shooting them from with the sneaky crossbow bolt, but will if you shoot them with a silenced gun. That's what I think is going to happen.
Fair enough.
Could be wrong, but it is what I think.
I'm calling it a meme gun at this point.
Yes, it definitely is that. Well, and Baggin for Life is asking. I'm sure I'm ruining that name again.
Bag for life.
Bag for life.
Bag for life. Okay, whatever. So, do you get a crime stat for a silent kill? Probably. I'm sure the game won't work without that. But
I think the crime stat's based on monitoring, not method that you die from. So.
Yeah, because then it would just get turned into a griefer weapon.
Well, can you sneak it past a scanner?
Well, that's another question.
It's pretty big and bulky, so I don't really know how you get away with that.
But then it would turn it into a
griefer gun.
Another griefer gun.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call an audible here, guys. I think it's been a great show. We had one more segment that was planned out, but I think we're going to call it for the night because we're already at an hour and 16 minutes. And I think that fourth segment would take at least a half hour. And I think we'll have a much better idea about what's going on with Theaters of War here by the next show.
Yep.
Yes.
So I think we'll save that one, and it'll also be out from under NDA, so we'll be able to talk more freely about it.
Yes.
Do we know where our next show is going to be, Jay?
Our next show is going to be Turn. Would you give us the date? It's April
the 24th at 2 p.m. U.S. Central for all the Europeans to be able to join us.
And we will have some Europeans on as co-hosts for that one.
Yay.
Well, Waterdrop has said yes. I think there's a couple more, maybe.
Yep.
Waterdrop's been on before.
He has. It's always been great, but he's going to be on with us.
the Op4 guy.
Yeah, we might be able to get Zuzu.
We can probably talk him into it.
Have to see what our who
Yeah,
can
he'll
make
be
it.
here. He'll be here.
So, with that said, let's go around the room one last time before we call it a night. Answer any questions. No, we're not doing a streamathon. I'm sorry. Guys in chat would love to get your feedback on the new screens and the new layout. So talk to us about that while we go around the room for one last thing. Jolly, any final thoughts?
No, it's a good job, Josh, putting that stuff together. Looking forward to it. Should be a blast. I've already got my MT. We'll see how that thing works out. And we'll talk a lot more about Tau next time.
Yep. Turn, any final thoughts?
great things ahead. Looking forward to putting together the training and pushing that out. Within our organization, I would encourage everyone else who's out there in your organization, start looking now on building your training pipelines and practice, and because it's going to be a skill that you need and a skill that you need to maintain.
Kestrel, thank you very much for the follow. And there was also another one in there that I forgot to welcome on the follow. I apologize. I don't see the name in the list right this second. Numidius, final thoughts.
Not many, really. I think I said what I had to say. I'm really looking forward to what's coming in the coming patch. There's a lot of good things. I'm looking forward to seeing what's talked about next month.
Okay. And Josh, final thoughts?
Again, I'm having the most fun I've had in a long time in Star Citizen. I'm really enjoying it. I'm excited for some of the announcements regarding to Theaters of War and some of the things that are projected to come in the next patch. So I'm just hopeful that, within the next reasonable amount of time, we get more gameplay and more teamwork, which is what I enjoy the most.
Completely agree. And Chapcap finally back at the house after being sent off to
5 months.
5 months
on the road.
5 months in East Coast La La Land.
Yeah,
I like the background.
Deployment.
Yeah, that's a pretty long deployment. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, great show. We really covered a lot of the great topics today. I'm very excited for the next patch. There are a lot of things in there that amazingly did not get cut that I'm looking forward to. These new tools are going to be great. The whispers I hear about TOW are pretty exciting.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to it. I think we should be pretty close to not Evocati. I think not that, but the next
PTU.
what? Yeah, PTU. Thanks. Sorry, it's been a while.
Wave
Wave
one.
one.
Wave 1.
Yeah, Wave 1. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, look forward to seeing what's coming.
I think, just to finish things up, I think we had a great show tonight. I really appreciate all you guys coming out to take a peek at this. We're like number 3 on Star Citizen on Twitch right now. And if you guys didn't catch the full episode, it will be released on the HangarReady YouTube channel on Wednesday. Maybe Monday. Well, we'll see. But no later than Wednesday. And, we will be releasing the segments over the next couple of weeks. I really want to give a shout out to Sam and Jaglin, who are helping us produce this and help set up the new setup that we have with the new cool screens that are 16:9 and got all the new mixer and all that stuff up and running. It was a big haul over the last month to rip all the old gear out and replace it. And we should have a faster and more lively video computer by the time we get to April. But I think with that said, it's going to be a great night. We really appreciate it. Go ahead and go to 6. We can do the Brady Bunch moment where we all wave. Wave, Josh, wave. Okay, guys, we'll see you on April 24th at 2 p.m. Central. Have a great week or a great month, and we'll see you in the verse.